Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. And we're with you from anywhere around the world in the country as we talk about global affairs, innovation, a recession, a turbulent world, politically, economically. And I greet you live from the All America City in Morrisville, North Carolina. I'm Steve Rao, and I'm your host, and I'm proud to be here, and I'm proud of this team at Roku. Today, I want to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. Please use this opportunity to spend time with a loved one. Tell them how much they mean to you. And Valentine's Day was actually, rumors are, it was started by St. Valentine, who was against the wishes of Emperor Claudius, who banned men from getting married. St. Valentine would marry secretly romantic lovers and became sort of a martyr for romance. We don't know if it's true or not, but Valentine's Day stayed, and it's always on this day. And I wasn't here yesterday, but a congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs, as Pat Mahomes is now on his way, I think, to becoming potentially the greatest of all time following Tom Brady. I think the second Super Bowl will be critically important in his future in the NFL. Hopefully he'll stay healthy. On that note, before we get to other issues around the world, including the mass shooting in Michigan State, we're going to talk a little bit about the earthquake, 30,000 dead in Syria and Turkey, and get updates from our panel on different things going on in the world. I did want to say and devote my monologue today to a special event I attended last week, as I attended President Biden's National Artificial Intelligence Task Force meeting, which was held in Cary, North Carolina at SAS. It was an amazing opportunity for me to meet the vice chair and chair of the committee. The vice chair is James Manica. He is a senior executive at Google. And I was there to learn and interact with them as an elected official. I was able to share some insights with them on artificial intelligence. The committee was put together by the White House, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, to basically address some key strategic areas. One is U.S. competitiveness and AI, looking at how we fare against China and other countries. So a significant amount of spending to the tune of $360 million to different regions of the country to invest in AI, particularly at our universities. Also, there was talk on the strategic goals of workforce training, developing the jobs of the future. How will AI affect our jobs as we automate them away? What are the new types of jobs that will be created? And how will we provide our children and youth the skills to do those jobs? They also talked about responsible AI with ChatGPT and others in the limelight today. What is going to draw the line between somebody just saying it's AI versus what the real truth is, where they have to eventually have data ethicists who would decide what is right and wrong, and how do you draw those lines and make those comparisons? And then they talked about equity in terms of, the rural-urban divide, and whether AI would be something that could be used to educate workers, even in the labor force, about how technology would affect their jobs. But those communities that don't have broadband and don't have access to AI or leverage the AI could actually be left out. So it brings in kind of the demographic challenges we face as a country between urban and rural. There are many, many other issues, but I'll close with this before we open up the debate, the talk today. Right before the meeting, I texted John Chambers, the former CEO and chairman of Cisco, and I said, John, I'm going into this meeting. Do you have any advice for me? And normally he will not text immediately after, but within 30 seconds of me sending the text, he emails me back or texts me back. And basically what John said really excited me. He said, Steve, AI is crossing the chasm. When he left Cisco, and for years he had talked about AI coming, but he said now it's gone mainstream with Google, Microsoft, ChatGPT, all the major companies now saying AI is going to be part of their future. What this means is going to have a significant impact, John says, on the economy, the new jobs being created, startup activities that can create the 15 million jobs which John thinks we can create around the world. Narendra Modi gets it. Macron in France gets it. Even Trudeau in Canada is getting it. So the question becomes, it's really important for our competitiveness of the nation. John ended his text to me by saying that the three companies that he's invested in artificial intelligence are doing great, great things. And that's wonderful news for those of you out there that are looking at making investments. or entrepreneurs that are building businesses around artificial intelligence. That's my take for the day. Let's get started. We have with us today Mark Lee. And
we've also got Lee Newton Rhodes with us as well. We'll see who else pops in.
Good morning, guys.
One or another. So always glad to have you here and all in that space. And you were talking about technology. There was actually some big news around technology, some that some people may like, some people may not like. But apparently that great company, Meta, is coming to North Carolina. So apparently they're providing some jobs that are coming to the American Tobacco campus. And that was some news that this area was excited about and all in that way. But of course, there are some people that are, there are various metaverses. So there are some people that are not all that excited about Meta coming in because Facebook has had some interesting history in some of their rules and regulations and things along those lines. And of course, they did recently change their name to Meta, even though there are multiple metaverses, including spatial and a number of other ones, including one that I think has actually just recently announced that they were going to not be that active anymore. I believe that's the one that's called Altspace and all in that kind of line. But definitely some interesting words in the words of technology and all in that way. And I don't know, you didn't mention it, but I've been speculating that she was going to jump in. And yes, Nikki Haley has announced her 2024 Republican presidential bid. So she said she was going to announce it on Valentine's Day, and that's exactly what she did. So she's now said that she's going to challenge Trump and all in that space. And of course, if Kamala runs, we could have two women with some Indian heritage that would be running against each other. So the former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador in the Trump administration is calling for generational change in the party. So she is actually one that is in the 50s, so that is younger than some of our other candidates. So she's saying that, hey, maybe we need to look at some younger folks as well. So that's what she called for in her announcement, and she sees an opportunity for a head start on fundraising and to command a closer look from potential Republican primary voters whose support she needs if she is to rise from the low single digit in early polls of the GOP field. So definitely last thing I'll say about her is some people look at America and see vulnerability. The socialist left sees an opportunity to rewrite history. China and Russia are on the march. They all think we can be bullied and kicked around. You should know this about me. I don't put up with bullies. And when you kick back, it hurts them more if you're wearing heels. So she made a little bit of a reference to being a lady and all in that space as well. But definitely looks like she was leaning on cultural issues, denouncing Democrats for pushing socialism in government and wokeism in schools, while citing her own biography as the daughter of Indian immigrants who rose to be South Carolina's first female governor and first non-white governor, as a rebuke of leftists who claim that America harbors systematic racism and all in that space. But that's what she said when she came out. So she's one of the first ones to jump out and all in that statement. And she did reverse a stance on Trump. So she did say that apparently Trump recently said that when Miss Haley informed her she was testing a run, he told her you should do it. So apparently he was saying go ahead and do it, but now he's doing it as well. So who knows what kind of remarks they may say to each other.
Good morning, Mark.
Yep.
I find it interesting she's saying that after 8 years of Obama, people still question whether America is racist. I can't process that.
Yeah, a lot of people can't process that as well. There is definitely some systematic racism. We can look at redlining. We can look at some banking practices. We can look
nowadays. Nowadays, systematic racism. Nowadays,
there is still redlining. There are still bank injustices. There are still environmental things. There are still a number of things that are racist that are going on in society, even in the year 2023. Yes, it is very much true. And
what cities or states are you talking about? What cities or states you're talking about?
Across the board.
Or there's systematic and redlining and what have you?
Definitely in the South, definitely in even some of the places like where you are in the North. I've got friends that are up there as well, and definitely they have.
When you say the South or the North, what states are you referring to?
I'm talking about Georgia. I'm talking about Florida. I'm talking about North and South Carolina. I'm talking about Mississippi for sure. I'm talking about Tennessee for sure. I'm talking about and some of them would be, so they're not just deep South states, but I would also argue some of the progressive states as well.
Are these the governments? Are these like the state and the city governments or redlining, or is it the private banks?
Yeah, well, in the case of banking, it's more of a industry. That's why they call it systematic racism, because it's the industries that sometimes are already got practices in place. I mean, they're still good. As a matter of fact, that's one of the commercials that Serena Williams was picking on. If you remember the Super Bowl commercial, it was actually
I didn't
a
watch.
play on the Good Old Boys Network, which is still very much out there in a lot of these country club kind of settings and everything. And that was actually one of the commercials was a play on that, just like there was a um, encouragement of women flag football in another one that was one of those that I enjoyed as well, because there's definitely been a push to have some professional football in the women's ranks, and some of that may be flag oriented.
And these decisions are on racist lines or on economic lines, the decisions that you're referring to.
Economic and racism are oftentimes tied together. So, I mean, right now, I've got friends that are doing a
Well,
business
you can
conference.
understand why banks would make decisions based on economics, could you not? Giving loans to people who can pay them back versus giving loans to people who can't.
No, but if
That's
you're
got to do
doing
with racism.
but if you're doing them in certain neighborhoods, and if you are not giving loans to certain people because of their race and ethnicity, then that is racism. And like I said,
That I agree with. You got me. I agree with.
And I've got
I
friends
agree with
in the
that.
banking industry that have even admitted that, and some of them are even African American bankers and African American individuals that are in the industry. And yes, sometimes you have to fight from within. So there are people that are in my circle that have told me how they have fought from within and all in that way. So you do sometimes have to fight from within, even if you recognize that things are going on. And I mean, another area that nobody has argued with me, and I don't know that you want to argue with me about it, is racism is the judicial system. The judicial system, it is a known fact that there are higher amounts of African Americans that are incarcerated, even though that does not necessarily mean that they are not other communities that are not doing crimes as well. They just might be able to afford better lawyers and get better lawyers, do other things along those lines.
Come back. Let's go back into. Well, I want to talk about artificial intelligence, but while we have him here, Sasha, just a quick update on Russia, Ukraine, and then I want to spend a few minutes talking about AI, because I think it's an important topic for all of our audience on World Edition. But Sasha, any updates on Ukraine?
Oh, well, the war is in a new phase, that's for sure. Now, what characterizes this new phase is that there were a lot of talk about imminent Russian attack. Now, Russians are trying to do some active things. I don't know exactly what it is, but people cannot really figure out, is it a part of Russian attack, or they're just biding time and preparing to something bigger. So Ukraine is in trenches. They have excellent defensive position and just waiting for Russians to attack to kill more Russians. That's about what's happening right now. Another explanation is that today is a Ramstein, where people are waiting decisions of whether the further weapons, including fighter jets, would be provided to Ukraine. So it's we'll see by the end of the day. Hopefully, we'll have more information on that. Also, it appears to be that the West and United States are completely given up on Putin and Russia. And they understand that if that's the case, and probably it is, they have to finish this war ASAP. And to finish this war ASAP, they have to provide Ukraine with all advanced weapons and training, and give them all ammunition. They need to get them once and for all, get rid of this menace. That's really what's happened there.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. I want to just get back to a few minutes, and we're going to go to other issues. It is, by the way, the 5th year anniversary of Parkland shooting. Want to remember that tragedy, and kind of ironic that, on that same day, we've got the Michigan State University shooting once again. Lots of these mass shootings occurring. But real quickly, it was a really fascinating experience to attend this AI meeting. The committee was lots of executives with lots of experience. I think that Chambers' insight was quite amazing, that, AI is here. But my takeaway is that the big issue right now is creating these jobs. And I think that that's the debate. Is artificial intelligence just going to take over where we're sort of going to lose our creativity as a society, and that, AI can write music, compose art, can do all of these things. So where do you draw the line, right? So what are your all's insights about this? And Sasha, the fact that, John said that Canada's, part of the problem is we're pushing out a lot of immigrants right now that are skilled immigrants that are really having a hard time staying in America. So some of them are going to Canada. Some of them are going back to India. Some of them are going back to other parts of the world. And so I do believe there's a brain drain occurring as well, even in the midst of labor shortages that we have here, right? So I just want to get the panel's insights on AI today. Any insights you can share with me?
I just have a general question. Is it really artificial intelligence, or is it really possessing the knowledge and the views of those people who are doing the programming? For example, if you have programmers who are very conservative or versus very liberal, will that affect the nature of this so-called artificial intelligence?
Typically, no. That's what I'll answer that question as someone that's in the industry. Typically, artificial intelligence is basically a machine or computer will intuitively learn the algorithms or programs. So I guess
somebody has to code it.
No,
well, yeah, that is true. So you could get someone that input data into a machine that is false, and then the AI would do that. But
or biased.
But most of the AI that I've witnessed, I'll give you an example of how sometimes this is an intuitive thing. So sometimes you go into a coffee shop to buy a coffee, and you've been there before. They now have automated it so that you automatically get a receipt every time you go to that same store, right, in an email, because it's intuitively automating that process, right? So the machine will learn that, and then it'll repeat it. It could be, for example, when one way artificial intelligence is used is call centers, right? So how many of us, would call a call center? We need service on our phone or having an issue with our credit card. Well, sometimes the way machine learning is, or AI, is that the machine or the chat bot would learn that question. So the next time you call, if you ask the same question, it wouldn't route you to an agent. It would text you the answer to your question. So the idea is every time the computer gets input data, they can actually make decisions that are on point. So it's not really that it's just a tool where you pump in. Now, it could be that somebody could use a chat GPT and just go write complete lies, right? And then chat GPT could publish that as real news.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's already been, that's what I'm going to say, Steve, in this case, I may disagree with you and everything. Not that we always agree on everything, but definitely a couple things. One, algorithms are very real, and that is part of what you're talking about, because definitely Facebook and a number of other people use algorithms, which means that if they see you, buying a coffee or buying something else, then they will automatically start sending you ads around what they think you want to buy and all of that. That has been going on for decades.
Mark, that's all true. But someone created those algorithms, a human.
Right. No, I agree. And one of the things I was going to say about Chat GPT, and that's the part that I was going to slightly disagree with what Steve said, that it is not going to be biased, is there's a report that came out recently that Chat GPT bias is actually anti-Semitic and pro-Palestinian. So a new report by one of the directors of an organization that researches anti-Semitism found that a popular artificial intelligence tool appears to be programmed with a pro-Palestinian anti-Semitic bias. So if the programmers have that bias, then yes, they would probably put that in their coding and other things. I know there have been both folks that have looked at some questions and asked some questions and have come up with answers that were seen as either very racist or very sexist. I know that one of the questions was asking about a engineer and an engineer type job and everything, and it basically said white men only apply. That's basically what the whole answer from ChatGPT was and everything. Now, is that because of the bias that was put in there and some of the reports that were fed into the machine? That is where the question comes and everything. So there has already been several folks on both the left and the right, because definitely even some of the folks on the right have said that ChatGPT has a liberal bias. So there are a number of folks that are wondering about the programmers and how the programmers are doing the programming, and are they not inserting their own personal bias into what is going on?
Evidently, they are, based on what you just said.
Right.
Evidently, they are putting their personal bias in there based on what you just said.
Right. No,
which is very unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate. I don't know that they can help that because I mean, even in reporting,
Of course they could.
people have their.
Of course, we just had a
biases.
Super Bowl the other night. If referees were bringing the personal biases and making calls based on that, that just corrupts the whole Super Bowl, corrupts sports. They're supposed to leave that, in the locker room.
They are supposed to, but I mean, are we even sure that they've done that? I mean, there were a couple of questionable calls on both the Super Bowl and the championship game and everything. And there are some folks that are wondering, were those not the deciding factors? And, did they need to let the players play and let the some of the infractions that might have been infractions, but not severe infractions go unchecked and all of that so that the players could decide the outcome and not necessarily the referees. And I know that there was one of those in the AFC championship game, and I think there was one on this game as well. So definitely, we want them to do their jobs, which of course is being the good umpires and the good, and I know I'm using a baseball analogy for a football referee, but being still very good judges of what is going on. But there are times, particularly at the end of a game, that you might have to swallow the whistle, as they used to say, and everything, and let the players be the ones that determine the final outcome.
Interesting. Well, it's quite amazing, and but we'll come back to this issue, and I think it's an interesting topic. I'm hopefully going to be more involved with the AI committee moving forward, and but let's talk. So we've got the Chinese spy balloon, and now there's been sightings of other objects flying into airspace. Apparently, are we concerned about how these things are getting into our atmosphere over the U.S.? I don't even know the details of what kinds of objects there are, but it just got a notification on my phone that this is happening. And have you heard about this, Mark?
Yeah, I definitely heard about that. I mean, it depends on who you're listening to and what kind of attitudes people want to have. I've heard everything from, it's actual spy activity, which is more than likely that's what that is. And of course, it's part of the great wars that go on between the different countries. Because after we had ours, hold on a second, Session. After we had ours, then China accused the U.S. of doing the opposite and bringing ours over there and everything. So of course there's this tit for tat going on, and of course you got the conspiracy theorists that are sitting there going like, all right, one of those was a balloon, we'll give you the balloon, but the other three might have been drones and or unidentified flying objects, because I've definitely heard that floating around there as well, where people are wondering, are the aliens invading and all in that space? So you're definitely going to have the folks that want to go down that road as well.
Well, if it's aliens, we should be careful what we're shooting down. So we want them landing here.
Very true.
Dan Worthington is here. So Dan, what do you think about Nikki Haley running for the White House?
Oh, I don't think she has a chance.
Okay.
Because
do you think it's a play for her to get on the ticket?
I don't know.
Why don't you think she has a chance, Dan? Is it because of not having enough support in the Republican base? What is your reasonings for thinking that she doesn't have a chance? Because I've always heard her as being one of the top 3 or 4 candidates. I mean, DeSantis, of course, is going to be the leading candidate, and definitely Trump is going to be up there. But she's definitely been touted as one of the 3 or 4 top choices. So is it just that she doesn't have the support of the base?
I think she has support of the base. I don't think she can get the support of the base. I don't know why she's doing it. The problem is Trump really creates an issue for the Republicans in general, because he's the carnival barker, right? Mm-hmm. And the crowds follow him. I mean, every time he pulls into town to these carnival, he gets 40,000, 50,000 people attending.
Yeah.
But why is that so, Dan? What is it about his message or personality he's able to do that?
Well, yeah, he's got the right message. He's saying the right things, and he believes what he's saying, right? And so from the standpoint of what he's saying, what his positions are, and all of that, he's right on. And he's touching the touch points of traditional American values and people who care about our country and patriotism and all that. And he's absolutely right on all those issues. What he's not right about is him being the right man. now because of the divisiveness he creates. Now, he's been painted in that corner, and he's really not as bad as the Democrats try to make him. He's formerly a Democrat himself. Many of his policies, in absence of the Trump phenomenon and filter, really are quite Democratic leaning, traditional Democrat leaning. And so he's not the demon that they try to make him out to. But what he is a very big disruptor on the globalist agenda. The globalist agenda is an anti-American agenda, and it's not America first. It's all about the oligarchs and the patriarchs and the money control of the world. And, that's what it's really all about. And, Trump, he's not part of that crowd. They've never let him be a part of that crowd. And, he thinks like a traditional American, He does things like flies troops home and does other things like that privately on his own accord. He has hundreds of examples of charitable work that's been done privately behind the scenes that we don't even know about, more so than any of the politicians or any of the other parties. Now, I don't support him as president because he has a big mouth and he is divisive. So if Trump can get behind one of the other candidates who have a chance and can support his policies, younger blood, that would be what's best for the country, I think. The Democrats are just trying to hide the ball. They're playing a shell game with the American people. They're all about the globalist agenda. They're all about the ultra rich and the elites and that kind of thing. And it's very clear that that's what their policies is. They could give a rat's ass about the American people, but it's a con job. The poor people and the immigrants and others, majority of them actually believe their con job, but it's all lies. It's a house of cards. They don't care. They don't care about you, Mark, or your people. They really don't. They've been putting you down. They've been Dan, you for decades, right?
But I've got a question to ask you around that, and because there are
and my people go is
there are two disruptors that have been out there and everything, and this is actually for everybody. But we have two politicians, at least if they work in politics, here on the panel here, that being, of course, Steve and, of course, Lee, in different ways of running their campaigns and everything. But both of those, I'm going to name two individuals. I will agree with you that Trump is a disruptor in some kinds of ways, but I think that Obama was a disruptor as well. And my question is, can that cesspool of politics that has existed, can it ever be totally disrupted the way that both of them wanted to? Or is it like a learn on the job process and you're never going to be able to fully get rid of what has become a mess on both sides? I think.
Yeah, but see, the problem with Obama, he was a part of the globalist agenda. He always was. He wasn't a disruptor from the standpoint. He was trying to push the globalist agenda along. That was part of what he was about. He was very naive going in, not really understanding how everything really worked. But once he got to see the book of presidents and all that stuff and knew actually what the secrets were and who was hiding what behind what curtain, then his policies changed a bit and moderated. And the reason they moderated was out of a reality of knowing what the heck's really going on. And I think most anybody that becomes president and sees that, what informs their view.
Dan, how much does the president really make a difference? Because we have the administrative state that stays regardless of the president.
Yeah, you're right. It's the Ron's triangle. One of you want to talk about a deep state, whatever you want to talk about. Yeah, that's really true. They do control most everything, and they're in deep with the medias and everything else. There's a real, you want to call it a conspiracy. There really is. I mean, there are no secrets on Capitol Hill, and the reason is because it leaks like a sieve, right? I think Trump tried to stop the leaking a little bit, but look at all the illegal leaking that went on through the FBI and others, and it's just it's unprecedented, treasonous,
with no accountability.
I know everybody knew everybody was lying, and they didn't really care. They decided to pursue it. Even Schiff right? He knew it was a lie, but he continued to pursue it. He considered just, I mean, they think they say it enough times, everybody will believe it's true. And it was a complete lie. Most all of it was, right?
But,
It was all a fabrication, and it was intended to do one thing, and that was to disrupt, prevent, inhibit, create barriers for Trump's agenda to move forward. Because he still moved it forward despite all the disruptions and the impeachments and everything else, which were all a farce. I mean, they set a dangerous precedent for anyone that serves in the office of president, right?
but Dan, along the same lines, if that is the case, and I'm not disagreeing that that's the case, and I think it's been the case whether you want to look at the labor movement, whether you want to look at the civil rights movement, or whether you want to look at the environmental movement, we can name just about any movement, including the women's movement, that a lot of times the leaders are bought and sold. That is one of the issues that happened here in Durham, North Carolina. I know I'm coming into a local area, but there is an area known as Black Wall Street, and part of what happened was that when they wanted to bring the highway through, some of those local leaders took the check. And I can't blame them, because I mean, if you're going to get the check, sometimes you might take the check at the sacrifice of the greater audience and the greater community and all in that. So actually, I can't blame them, because I don't think that was the greatest move in the world and all in that space. But that's just one example. I think it happens on a regular basis. So if the money brokers are buying and paying people on a regular basis, how can the common people get past that and get to a more stable and better kind of government? I mean, we definitely don't want to be totalitarian like Russia is and everything, but there's a whole lot of people that are buying movements, buying organizations, buying communities, and a number of other things. So how does the common man get past that? Or do we just kind of like dig our heads in the sand like the ostrich and hope that it goes away and wait till the...
Well, I think David Walker has the best idea, and that's to get Convention of States together. The problem is there is a swamp. Most people go to Congress with the idea, pretty naive, not understanding how things really work there. And then they discover all the corruption and everything that's really going on, how things really work. And so they have a question: be ineffective or cash in, right? And so that's really the problem. The amount of international money and dark money that is available to these politicians and their various causes is just astounding. The international money press through the bond markets in Europe and others, through Euroclear and others, is just absolutely staggering. It represents 70% of the money in the world. In fact, in just a few years ago, Euroclear did $193 trillion in financial transactions in a single year. And that is how they expand their money base and print money legally, even though there's no money that's actually printed. It's all done through the world banks and through the banking system. And that's the big secret that not a lot of Americans really understand. So we're over here putting our money with Schwab and TD Ameritrade, and those jackals are getting 10 times the leverage on their money through these instruments and through these trading programs and other things, and making money hand over fist. These people who hold and own and control gold, they don't sell it. What they do is they lend it in instruments to bolster other people's financial back statements, right? And then they actually make more in a year are trading their gold and backing these financial statements so people can borrow than they would if they sold the gold. I mean, it's really amazing the kinds of commodity-based trading and other kinds of things that are done in Europe, and through JP Morgan set this up back in the day. Euroclear was part of what he set up, and Germany has the same kind of bond. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the same kind of bond market, and these things are traded regularly. And so the regular people, us American people, we're kept in the cold and kept stupid about how world finance really works. And our investment opportunities are are defined and limited because we have no access to the financial markets and the bond markets and the big trades and the other things that the people are really making the money on and expanding their portfolios worldwide, because the people who have the money really control the money.
Hey, but Dan,
And
it's not just us though, because that's one of the things I'm getting to get to, and I know that I brought it up a couple of other times, but and I did hear your praise of Modi, Steve, on the side of AI, and I'm not disagreeing with that, but apparently, just like we have folks that are digging into investigations, India is doing the same thing, because apparently the BBC offices in India have been searched as a part of an investigation by income tax authorities. So the searches in New Delhi and Mumbai came weeks after the broadcaster aired a documentary in the UK critical of said Indian prime minister. So the BBC said that it was fully cooperating with authorities, but it does sound like that might be one of those investigative pushbacks because of the fact that they aired that documentary, which focused on the prime minister's role in anti-Muslim violence in Gujarat in 2002 when he was chief minister of the state. So we're going to see a lot of this kind of like political tit for tat going on, not just here, but in other parts of the world as well.
Yeah, I think so. We're going to see that, occurring in India. I remember meeting Modi in 2007, but let's not forget that Prime Minister Modi was banned from visiting the United States for a number of years and was recognized by our State Department as a terrorist. In fact, after he became prime minister, what's surprising is that when he became prime minister, I think he automatically allowed entrance in the U.S., but even prior to that, he was not allowed in the United States. He could not visit the United States. And there was a lot of companies from all around the world investing in Gujarat, the state. Now, that's beyond him. He's obviously the prime minister, and now they think he'll be eventually go on to become the longest serving prime minister. He'll be a shoo-in for re-election. But this this whole notion of Islam and everything. But the other thing I'll say, and I'm sure Shakil Latimer just joined, but what's very interesting is that India right now, like Gandhi, who was always revered as the father of India, is now being portrayed very negatively by the BJP, Narendra Modi's party. And there's even been some people that have been singing accolades to Natam Godse, who assassinated Gandhi, and then many of the so-called freedom fighters. So they just did a movie in India about freedom fighters, and Gandhi wasn't even mentioned, right? So there is this sense of nationalism, and he's criticized that he was weak, that he allowed for partition, that he wasn't really the father of India. And it's really hard for a lot of us who, grew up admiring Gandhi to see him being attacked. So very interesting. But Shakil, I don't know if you've heard about this, but just lots of changes in India going on, right? It's just kind of crazy.
Well, I just have to say, it's interesting to hear you say that, it's difficult for people that have grown up admiring Gandhi to see him being attacked and have his legacy being attacked the way it is. Yeah. Well, it's difficult for somebody like myself who's grown up with a deep love and affection for the United States and its history, and to see the founding fathers of America get attacked or American history be attacked. Yeah. For somebody like myself, Steve, I don't, my family doesn't directly come from India. We were displaced. And so it's not as though I can trace my family back and say, this is where in India we came from. I just have to have a guess. And you know what? When I come to a new world country, it doesn't matter. If I come to the United States or Canada or Australia, where I grew up, it doesn't matter where I'm originally from. I've become Australian, or I've become British, or I can become American if I was to move there. So, look, this going back in history to rewrite it, I think is very harmful. But more importantly, even at the time, there is no deity. Gandhi did a lot of good things, but he's not a god. He's not perfect. There were a lot of people that perhaps didn't get quite the result, or who he didn't advocate for quite as hard. There's also allegations of sexual misconduct, from him. So I'm not going to sit here and call into question his history or his legacy. But I think it's very important that we don't deify people that were around decades ago at a time in history that none of us experienced.
Hey,
All right.
Shaquille, I've got to ask you a question because you just brought it up and everything. You've mentioned it a couple of times, this fact of not understanding India because you weren't from India. Your family was displaced. You spent some time in Fiji, spent some time in Australia, and everything else. That's actually one of the arguments that African Americans have because most of us have no clue. I mean, I can guess based on my skin tone and everything that my family members back in the day might have been from Northern Africa, but that's only a guess and everything. And that is one of the conversation points that a lot of people in the African American community have is that there are several nations in Africa. Half of us, or most of us, have no clue which one of those we came from and everything because we were brought here forcibly and the whole thing in that space. So we have no clue as to where our original home is.
Mark, I've never disagreed with you about African American, the desire for African Americans to have some connection to their homeland,
Right.
and with some of the issues that are facing your country, and race relations in your country. I've never disagreed with you on that. What I have just simply pointed out is that these issues are more complex than just skin color.
Oh,
And
you're not.
if you say to somebody like myself, I should like Kamala Harris, regardless of her policies, the fact that I have been on the other side of the political spectrum from her my entire life, that I should put that aside because she has a shared ethnicity with me. Well, we come from completely separate parts of India, more than likely, okay? And India has a caste system. These things are really complicated. So
Right.
for the African American community to say to me, well, you should just look at skin tone and forget about nationality, forget about identity, and forget about your family's history, it's really actually quite insulting. And the reason why I have made those comments to you before is I've had family members of mine that have messaged me and said, hey, you can't just let that slide. And I agree with them. I understand where they're coming from. So that's all I'm saying to you, Mark, is that these issues are more than just simply skin tone and skin color.
I heard what you're saying, but we're gonna bring in our boss and one of the bosses because Kim is joining as well, and I'm sure that she's got some thoughts on the various things that are going on, including one that I was going to ask you that we asked everybody else, but I want to hear Kim's reaction and also yours, Shaquille. But Dan doesn't think Nikki stands a chance. I actually think that Nikki Haley could actually be a viable candidate for the Republicans and all of that. But Kim, what are your thoughts? And Shaquille, what are your thoughts? Does Nikki stand any chance whatsoever, or is she not going to be possibly the first woman president? I know that Hillary was trying to get that job, but maybe it's going to be Nikki that gets it. But Kim, what's your thoughts?
Well, you see my title? I thought I was. So anyway, I think right now is a little early to be predicting this because, we got to wait and hear all the trash that everybody's going to throw out about everybody for the next year. So I'm not going to put my money on anyone right now because we got way too much trash to sort through and people are going to throw it. So I say let's just sit back and wait, and I hope that we get some good candidates and that we get rid of the primaries the way they're done and we all get to vote the same day instead of us poor North Carolinians having to wait until all of the good people are sorted out and we're left with the trash to vote for. That's how I feel.
I think I will say this about Nikki
Very
Haley.
upbeat.
I mean, Nikki Haley, her best friend lives in Morrisville, actually, and the reputation she has within the Indian community is a very upstanding one. She did marry into Christianity, but she is the daughter of Sikhs, and still to this day, even as a former governor and UN ambassador, has been known to go to her town in Bamberg and visit the Gurdwara, which is what they call the Sikh temples. I think that the biggest challenge she has, and this is what I'm hearing out there just with Indian Americans, is that she just seems to be a bit hypocritical in that before Trump, I think Nikki Haley's candidacy for president was actually much stronger, having just been a governor. But then she went in to work for Trump and then kept supporting Trump even after she left. And now she's saying, I'm against Trump. So I feel like her messaging is really off. And she sort of comes across now as an opportunist. I think that many people out there are going to be really questioning, why did she stay silent for so long? Why did she not, come out and start telling this is what I would do differently than Trump. So I think she's running because she wants to be the vice president. And the best way to become the vice president is to run for president, just like Kamala Harris. So now when I look back, I think that was a done deal. I think Kamala ran. I think a lot of it was staged. I think she knew Beau Biden. That was one of her best friends. He was late. Beau Biden was the Attorney General of Delaware. And when Beau Biden died, what I heard was that Kamala Harris was in the hospital room with Jill and the president prior to Biden becoming president. That's how close Beau Biden was to Kamala Harris. But she knew by running.
I'm going to have to just quickly interrupt you, Stephen. Sorry. I'm just going to quickly interrupt you because I know there's about 15 minutes left for the show, and I'm about to cross borders from Switzerland into Austria, so I might lose service for a few minutes. I'll just very quickly say, look, I don't actually think that Nikki Haley would be successful in the primaries. I don't really think that she's hypocritical. I do like her, but I'm not sure that she'd have enough national appeal. But look, it's 2 years away, so you don't really know. Campaigning will start to some degree later this year. I think there's plenty of time for these things to be sorted out. So yeah, and to answer your question, Kimberly, sorry I've been a little bit evasive. I don't know, but I will be in Canada on Saturday, visiting Sasha, and then I'll be heading across to the West Coast. So I'll talk to you after the show.
Are you coming to North Carolina?
Well, I'm going to. The original plan was I was coming to North Carolina, but I also have to rush back to Dubai, and I'm coming back to the United States in another month. So I'll let you guys all know privately off air exactly what the plan is, but I will try and come through North Carolina on my way out.
Okay. I guess one of the questions I've got to ask, and this is actually for you,
Just
Steve.
the last thing I'll quickly say about Donald Trump, Steve. It's one thing to say that she's hypocritical because she's changed her mind, or because she's at sometimes supported him, sometimes hadn't. Ted Cruz was no fan of Donald Trump's in the 2016 election, but he ended up supporting him later. I think politics, a lot of conversations happen outside of the public view, and also people will change their minds. I think that a lot of people in the 2020 election felt like he won the election. There was something that was really amiss in that election process, etc. The feeling on the ground that I'm hearing from people now is, look, whatever's happened has happened. It's now 2 years later. Do we want to be going backwards and having Donald Trump back in there? So, some people may well have supported him in 2020 who aren't necessarily going to support him in 2024. And the opposite, there might be some people there that didn't support him in 2020 that will support him in 2024. I don't think that's hypocritical. I think that's people just adjusting their opinions and positions based on what they're seeing around them.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
I want to add something to what Steve was saying, though. I think what he's saying, it makes her come across as being an opportunist, to be switching her colors of allegiance, and why now, right? And so I think a lot of people come across as an opportunist, whether they're riding the coattails of someone at a certain time. And maybe they are, because I think, sometimes we all kind of do that a little bit in some sort of way, whether you got a job because somebody helped you and then you find out that they're not as nice as you thought they were. So I think things do change. I think you get to know a person a little bit better as you get into your job. And sometimes you just have to suck it up until you're out. So
I hear what you're saying, Kim, but
opportunity is always there. I think we just need to sit back. We've got some time to watch to see how things are going. Maybe start a show just on that, so that we can talk about that. There's so much going on. Wouldn't you agree, Steve?
No, I would definitely agree. But what Gary talks back to Steve, because this is actually up his alley, is how important is, whether it's Nikki or whether it's DeSantis or whether it's whoever, is the economic going to be? Because one of the things that I heard that was praised around Nikki Haley as governor was that she did a lot of economic development, brought a lot of businesses there. I mentioned that Meta's coming to North Carolina, but she was definitely, I think, one of the forces behind possibly getting, well, they already got the Coliseum down in South Carolina that's a practice one for the Panthers, but I understand that they might be trying to get the actual Panthers to move it to South Carolina at some point or another. And there was other businesses that came to South Carolina that are part of her history. So I'm wondering how much is that economic force that she was in South Carolina going to play into her being a strong candidate?
Well, I think a lot of it depends. She'll have to, obviously being a governor is always an advantage, even a former governor, where you can point to specific things you did as the executive of a very large state, South Carolina. I do think she did have a very good record. I remember when Governor McCrory was governor of North Carolina, he said there was a healthy competitive spirit between her and the governor in terms of North Carolina. And she's a great salesperson. She's very telegenic. She has a good personality. She's tenacious and going after the big deals. And obviously, for whatever reason, South Carolina gets more of the auto manufacturing, assembly and manufacturing than North Carolina does. But I think also what I've heard is that it's a low tax state. And so the infrastructure of South Carolina wasn't the best. The roads, in my opinion.
Hang on, hold up. That was very slick. It's a low tax state, so therefore the infrastructure is not very good.
Well, no,
New York is a high tax state, and their roads are crap.
But Shaquille, that's a good point.
True.
But my statement wasn't being political. I do think low taxes is actually a good thing. Obviously, I'm paying more and more taxes every year. And quite frankly, it's the worst day of my life when I have to pay with my wife these estimated taxes and these taxes. And you're like, God, why am I working so hard? Why can't I write more stuff off? Why can't my wife and I go buy some land and, why are these developers making millions of dollars and then we're not paying any tax? And she and I are both working plus my public life. And then we're paying in that top echelon of the tax. So, yeah, I would be happy, even as a Democrat, if I was paying a little bit of a lower tax. But when you do lower the tax, that's less revenue coming in to do your roads, to do your bridges. And so by saying, well, I want to have the lowest tax rate in the South, which is what Governor Haley, when she was governor, did that affect the amount of, potholes they could fix in the roads or funding? And, I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
Squander tax.
But let's just hold up. Let's just hold up a second though, because that argument is negated by, as I just said, using New York as an example. The roads there are terrible. The bridges are absolutely awful. I've driven, as you guys all know, I've just come from Kenya, and I can tell you, I think I prefer the roads there than the road from New York City up to Long Island. So, I've never experienced anything like that in my life. But what I will just say, Steve, is, when you talk about it being a low tax, well, the low headline tax rate is what you're really referring to. You've got to compare apples with apples. What's the total tax burden? So you've got property taxes, you've got sales tax, you've got all sorts of other taxes that each state has different rates on. The problem with the tax system all over the Western world is not, I don't think, how much each person's paying. It's how complicated it is, and it's the fact that you've got a situation where two people in very similar economic positions, whether they be working class people, middle class, or even the upper echelons of society, will be paying two completely separate tax rates, completely different contributions. That just makes no sense. And I think we really need to, make sure that Western countries get this right, and that perhaps there's a little bit more uniformity across the world to make sure that people aren't ducking and weaving around the tax code. Everybody should contribute something.
Yeah.
But we also don't need to be contributing half of our wages or more. That's ridiculous.
Hey, Shaquille, just really quickly.
I want to add what Shaq said. I've been traveling countries, is they can actually build roads that have last centuries, and we can't build a parking deck to last a year. I'm scared to death to drive across any new bridge we build in this country. I don't think they hold up. In fact, many times they end up closing them down, going, we have to redo them. So I agree that we're not investing properly in even our own roads. But it's not Biden's fault. this goes way back before Biden. This, goes back before Trump. I'm not even going to blame Trump.
No, it's multiple things. It's been going on. It's been going on for a while.
Oh, but this has been going on for
hold on a
decades.
second, because
Kimberly, this
I know
has
we're
been
ready to wind
decades,
down because we got to do Sasha's show very shortly. But I did have a quick question. There was and it is a very quick question. You just said you came from Kenya. One of our premier shows, I know that you're one of our premier people, but one of our premier shows is Barbara Smith's show that is on Thursdays. And I know that she has been to Kenya as well. And some of the people that she has traveled with said that they felt, and I have not been to Kenya, even though I've had friends that are Kenyan, that they felt that they had a great deal more respect in the way that they were treated there in Kenya than even some parts of the United States. So I was just wondering your reaction to Kenya as a place and how you were treated, because they give some very high praises to that country of Kenya. I've heard Dr. Ruben West, who's been on our show a couple of times, and Barbara say it several times, but I wanted to hear it from another perspective. So were you treated well in Kenya?
I was treated very, very well in Kenya, and I'm very honoured to have had the invitations I've had from the Kenyan government and from high-ranking members of their ministries there. I also met with some leaders of some other African countries, and I was treated amazingly. And then at the end of the trip, I decided to go up to do a safari in the Masai Mara, which was absolutely gorgeous. It was very interesting for me, Mark, going to these countries and talking to the leaders of developing countries about what their priorities are. And I think it's always a reminder, and it was a really stark reminder to me, of some of the things that we argue about, not just on the show, but some of the things that we argue about in Western society. We just argue about shit. And you go over there and you actually, when they talk about needing healthcare, they don't have any. The annual wage for some of these people is around $2,000 to $3,000 a year. To get an MRI costs you around $2,000. So they can't afford it. So, healthcare is such an important thing that their politicians are focusing on. Their leaders are focusing on increasing trade, making sure that the kids get a good education, those sorts of things. Although we sort of talk about the same stuff, but we are so incredibly privileged and lucky to live in the countries that we live in. And what I found most incredible was actually seeing political leaders and their political opponents sitting down at a dining table with me, discussing the same issues, even though they were supposedly, in opposition to each other. Now, I cannot even imagine what a dinner with Donald Trump and Joe Biden would be like. It might be like that thing that happened in the lounge with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer with Pence and Donald Trump. That's what I think that dinner would go like. So, I just think that it's very grounding to go to those countries and see what they are dealing with, and then come back home and think, a lot of the things that we argue about, should we be arguing about them, or can we do something a little bit more positive?
Well, folks, it's time for close out. I want to wish you all the safe travels, Shaquille, and I'm going to close out. I've got a minute left to close out. On this Valentine's Day, and Kimberly, thank you for liking my red tie and my pink shirt. It is Valentine's Day, and no, I will not be taking my wife out this evening because I have a city council meeting. However, on Saturday, I'll close out with a wonderful monologue. I ended up attending the Journey concert with my wife in Greensboro. And it was unbelievable, first of all, to hear some of our favorite songs. I'd actually gone to a Journey concert with my wife when we were 17 in college, and it was amazing. We listened to the same Journey music. But to see a Filipino, Arnel Pineda, get up there and sing almost like Steve Perry, not as good as Steve Perry, but the same songs, whether it was Faithfully or Open Arms or Wheel in the Sky, Keep Turning. My wife and I looked at each other, and number one, we felt old for the first time in our lives. We all both are 52. But I said to our friends, we were at the concert, maybe that's what's great about America. Maybe we can be an old country where we can see an 80-year-old president run for re-election. We can see 75 and 80-year-olds playing the guitar and playing in a band. And yes, Arnold Pineda looks like he's 32. But what I found out is he's 57 years old with his family that lives in the Philippines. Quite amazing, though, that a Filipino is actually the lead singer carrying on the legacy of Steve Perry, celebrating 50 years of Journey. So, it made me inspired to say, you know what? If you're listening to the show and you're 50 plus, you got every time in the world to do whatever you do until that heart stops beating. So go make it happen. Hell, I'm thinking about a run for the White House in 20, 25 years. I'm only 51. Why not? I'll be a young 73, 74, right? But the same goes for
Why don't
all.
you just take up knitting,
Steve.
take up golfing, go and do old people's thing, and just enjoy yourself. Life's too short to be running around the White House in your 70s or
You're
80s.
right,
Steve.
Zach. You're right.
You're no JFK.
Maybe that's
okay?
what it is. And my
I mean-
Valentine is my mom. I called her today and wished
I
her
mean, do we
Happy Valentine's
do we
Day.
maybe, because Carter had such a bad run, do we maybe invite Carter to do another run? He's in his 90s. He may as well. It can't be any worse.
Just as well.
Hey, there you
just as
go.
well.
Hey guys, well, thank
It'd
you
be
all
about
so
the
much.
same thing, right?
Happy Valentine's Day to all. Be safe, and we'll see you soon tomorrow.
Happy Valentine's Day. God bless.
God bless.
God
God
bless.
bless
Take care, guys.
everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Are we in election stuff?